That we're back again here at the studio, number one studio here in Genesee County, and we are just elated, happy to see you out there, knowing that you are ready for what is it? Ready for what? Ready for the world. Ready for the world. Yeah, there's a singing group that's out, ready for the world. They're going way up the wind now, but we're here, and we're glad to be here today to talk about something in the aftermath of John and I've been arguing in the studio. We've got on the air here, and we'll see how that comes out. I'm going to say a few words about that. What we're going to talk about today, and I want to hit this from another standpoint. Everybody's talking about uh, the thing that happened Saturday of last week, where Donald Trump did what Hillary Clinton was talking about doing and what Barack Obama was talking about doing. This man finally pulled it off, and then all of a sudden, all the ones that had no problem when Barack Obama was talking about it, and so was Hillary Clinton talking about it. They were all in favor of it. As soon as Trump does it, then of course it's time to impeach this man because they're not really serious about the United States of America. I don't think this. Sometimes your interest with other countries does converge, but in that convergence does not mean that you're not putting your country number one or putting your country first because there are other interests that are involved in it. And I think in this case right here, it's not in our interest, our national interest for a person over there in Iran who are the number one financiers of terrorism in the world. These people have killed Americans on numerous occasions. And you saw that picture that they had, I think this is during the Carter administration, when they had these Marines had their hands behind their heads and they're holding hostages and so on. And this kind of thing that was against the most powerful, we say the most powerful country in the world. And to have this happening in America to Americans with all this firepower that you have and have no respect for that, I think it's time to put some people in their place. And there's a consortium of interests that I know exists in terms of this will also have an effect and serve the interests of other interest groups. But if it serves your group first, and if that is the culminating point of why you're doing what you're doing, what Trump did this past weekend, I think you have to look at it from the standpoint of how does it serve our interests. I don't care about, I don't think we can, I am totally against this country being the savior of the world and thinking it has to have its fingers in every pie, in every I that's being dotted, and every T that's being crossed. The U.S. has to be involved. I'm not for all this intervention this country's involved in. I don't even like the 175 or so military bases this country has around the world. Why? Why do we have that? We have a particular interest in saving our own country and solving our own problems. Sometimes that does not mean that that you can do that from an isolation standpoint. And I'm not an isolationist, but I'm not also not an interventionist as well. I'm neither of those two things. I am for protecting the national sovereignty and national interests of the United States of America. That's where I stand. And a lot of people are standing on everything we do militarily. We should get involved in the military affairs of other countries. We should order them around and so on and so forth. I'm not coming from that position. I don't think we should have the moral authority. We have the moral authority on the nuclear weapons because we're the only ones in the world on the Earth. I don't know if they use them on Mars or not, but we're the only ones on the Earth that have ever used an atom a nuclear weapon. We use it in, as you know, and this is everybody learns this in American history classes. They don't learn much else, but they certainly learn that we dropped a bomb on Hiroshima August 6, 1945, and did similarly to August 9th, 1945. And those persons that coming behind that saying, well, they didn't have to do that. I'm with Thomas Sowell on this point. That is that if they were going to surrender after the entering into the atomic age with the dropping of the nuclear bomb on Hiroshima, why didn't they do that? Because they had not done it 3 days later, and then it took them another 6 days to do unconditional surrender after they dropped the second atom bomb. because they wanted the U.S. to come out of the air, and then they're going to show them where it was at on the ground. And we don't. If it takes what Truman did in 1945 to save one American life in war, and you have a weapon, and that war will save American lives, I'm for the use of it. And I'm not for this Johnny come lately kind of thing in terms of later on, we have all this moral authority. They shouldn't have done this and should not have done that. If it saved the American lives, they should have used it. And if they did not do the unconditional surrender after the first atom bomb was dropped, 3 days later, they had another bomb drop. And that's when Hirohito and the others, the general was still against it, by the way. Go read John Toland's book. They were still against it when they dropped the second bomb. They still were going to make them come out of the clouds and come down and fight. And Hirohito took charge of it and came on the radio. And people had never heard his voice before, didn't know how it sounded because he was a mystique, a mysterious. They kept him in the background to build a mystique around who he was. And it's because of that mystique they were willing to do those kamikaze things they're doing in World War II. When you have a person that is fighting from a theocratic standpoint, you have hell on your hand. Because in this, and that's what you have with Iran. Because in reading over what has happened the last 5 days now, let's see, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, well, not 5 days, 3 days, over the weekend, 3 days. Over the weekend, there's the Ayatollah Khomeini that is see that the theory of behind that of this leadership is that they can't lose, because if they lose in the war itself, they win because they have martyrdom. And when you're fighting that kind of ideological outlook and people that are carrying that view in leadership with power, do you want them to have the atomic nuclear weapons? I don't. And when they're saying they're going to kill you and they're calling you Satan and things like that, you want to arm these people and give them the gun to do what they're saying they're going to do? If they tell you repeatedly they're going to do this and they're developing the means to do it, then believe them. And everybody been talking about it. Barack Obama talked about it. Hillary Clinton talked about it. And then Donald Trump took action against it to stop them, to stop the talk. Did the same thing in terms of one nation that is nuclear armed, and that's Kim Jong-un, and told him, you will stop threatening Americans. You stop saying what you're going to do, that you're going to do this and this to America. If you say that, you're going to stop that talk, because we don't know if you mean it or not, but we're going to stop you from saying it. Because if you say those things, we think you mean it. And we have the right to, in fact, defend ourselves, and we're not trying to wait until you do what you say you're going to do. We believe you, and we intend to stop you, because we're going to save American lives, and that's what the government should do. We finally have a leader, by the way, in the United States of America. That's what we used to be. We're now a United Nations of America. We're not a United States anymore. We are a disunited States, because we let all these illegal aliens in this country right now, and we don't know who we are. We've lost our identity as a country. But there's a man in here saying America first, and that's what he did this past weekend. He put America first again. Well, others were talking about it, and none of them really meant it, and they don't mean it now. That's what they're talking about. We got these Democrats, these persons who I think are involved in treason. I think the Democratic Party today in Washington is a treason party. I think that's what was being talked about back in the 1930s, and really in the 1950s, more particularly 1950s, when you had Joseph McCarthy that was doing his investigation. I think that investigation should have gone forward. I think we would have found out something very deeply embedded, entrenched in this country, in the government of this country, if Joseph McCarthy had been allowed to stay on his duty, which was to point out we have traitors inside of our government, and we have that in our government right now. We have traitors in Washington right now, and that's why they are upset. They're upset. They're upset with Donald Trump for taking a action that made the country safer. Is anybody going to argue that the country is less safe today than it was then, with this man having gone into Iran and destroyed temporarily, at least, and postponed for at least they're saying a decade of the nuclear ambitions of a country that's run by theocratic zealots who are threatening to do things to this country, and we're going to wait for them to develop the weaponry to do it? I don't think we have to. I don't think you do that, because that kind of kamikaze attitude is what has gotten this country in all this trouble it's in right now. But we're not defending the nation. We're allowing the nation to be invaded with these illegal aliens, and we don't even have an identity now as a country. But I think what happened this past weekend, we had a lot of people to wake up to understand that this is not Joe Biden's America. You keep threatening America, anybody in this country, keep threatening America. We're not waiting for you to act on what you're threatening to do. We're gonna be proactive and preemptive, and we're not going to apologize for it. If you don't want to, in fact, bring on the wrath of the United States, don't threaten this country. Don't make a threat against the United States of America. We're not playing any games here. This is not Joe Biden's America. And this was announced loud and clear this past Saturday. Get some respect and understand that we're not going to capitulate anymore on the national stage with the power we have. And if those mullahs did not get a message this past weekend, there are more messages coming to them. If they are going to do what they're saying they're going to do, and they're now talking a lot of noise, they better be able to back it up, because Donald Trump is not playing any games here. I'm sorry. This is not the Biden administration. This is not yesterday. This is a new day here. And to put America first is what happened this past weekend, where Donald Trump put America first. There are the interests involved, and I know that we don't have the only community of interest out there. There are a lot of interests that's involved in it. But this country took a lead in terms of doing something for itself, and in doing that, it did something for the world as well, because the world was also served by this. It's also served by I also understand this is another point, that I don't think necessarily that countries become less safe when a country develops a nuclear weapon. I don't think that's quid pro quo true, because what I've seen is that when we had a monopoly on the nuclear weapons, which is the thing that what's that guy's name wrote the book called The Implosion Conspiracy, in a way about the Rosenbergs and so on. A very good book that was written about that. I think that when you have a monopoly on it, that doesn't serve the interests of peace. When you have a monopoly on a powerful weapon and you're the one to have it, I don't think that that's necessarily quid pro quo, that when you have proliferation of a weapon, that the world becomes less safe because of that. Because what you have here with nuclear weapons is that for example, is that you can bring the war home. As long as they can stand in these rooms, sit in these rooms around these desks and drink coffee and talk about war and stuff like that. Yeah, they can engineer a lot of war, but the nuclear war brings the deterrent of nuclear energy is that war can be brought home to the warmongers. I understand that. But I'll tell you this, if you keep telling me that you're going to, in fact, bomb this country and so on and so forth, that you're going to do this and that, and you're going to call the country Big Satan and all the rest, and Little Satan and all of that kind of thing, if you're going to label this country like that and target this country where Marines have died and we've had attacks being made on Americans around the world because you don't have any fear of retaliation, I'm glad to see last Saturday that day is over. The message was sent loud and clear. You don't threaten the United States of America. And Donald Trump sent a message out and went loud and clear. Now, there are some other things involved in it, but the message that was sent to Iran is that you are on notice. And if they're talking about retaliation, we're talking about retaliation of their retaliation. That's how it's going to go. and we have more firepower than what they have. And you're not going to be threatening this nation anymore. Nobody. That's not going to work anymore. We're going to get some new respect for America that we have not had with these weasels that have been running this country and running this country down and running it into the ground, and is no longer a force to be respected. They don't respect the United States. I went outside the country for a month. You should have heard some of the things some of the conversations I was involved in when I was out of this country for a month. You'd be surprised at what people were saying, that they would never have said these things when I first started traveling back in 1984. When this country had some presence. I mean, to be an American citizen meant something. And when they said, "Are you an American?" they said that for a certain amount of pride in your citizenship, because our citizenship could be identified as that. What does it mean now? It doesn't mean too much. We can't even identify it. Because the non-citizens have the same rights as the citizens have, according to these persons that are running this country and running it into the ground. The president there's a judge. You can't believe that a judge would order a president of the United States around like they're doing. The president has people that they're shipping out of the country because they have no right to be here, and they're acting like they have sacrosanct legal prudence in America, the same as as citizens have. You got to be. I have been in, let's see, about 25 countries altogether. I don't know of a country I've been in. I've had to have a visa in every country I was in. If I was going to stay there, and if I wasn't just passing through. Now, some countries just pass through, and you don't have to have a visa for that. But you're going to go in the country and you're going to be there. You better have a visa. Or you're going to jail. You're not going to be in there talking about you have a right to asylum because you're running from something in your country, and it's so bad where you're running from, but yet you're waving the flag of the country you ran from, and you're burning the flag of the country you ran to. I'm telling you right now, I ain't buying that. Most ain't buying it. That this kind of total disrespect of this country around the world. I was in so many different arguments, doing not so many arguments, but just so many different discussions where I was just exasperated over what I was hearing. I couldn't believe it. Trump this, Trump that. That's all I was hearing. And the press you've done a very good job of making Donald Trump a pariah around the world. Not Joe Biden, but Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a pariah. They are so sure this man is the modern Adolf Hitler. I even hear that kind of stuff. I heard that over there. This man has no respect for the American people. The man has more respect for the American people than Biden had and than Obama had. Do you think these Democrats have respect for the American people? I wrote an article today on Facebook. I suggest you read it because you're not reading this anywhere else. The people that have no respect for the American people, in fact, the people that have not only it goes beyond no respect, it goes into what was the word I used in that post? Because it's beyond disrespect. Disrespect is just what you dismiss. I'm talking about something beyond that. And I used the word. What was that word? Where I was saying that contempt. It's beyond lack of respect. It's beyond that. There's a lack of respect for the American people by both parties. But the Democratic Party has contempt for the American people. There's that contempt you're seeing in terms of them coming out against Donald Trump, because the contempt is aimed at Donald Trump, but the contempt is the American people who put him in power. I'm telling you what they're doing. When Donald Trump gave his when he spoke before a Joint Chief of Congress recently, his most recent speech before Congress, not one Democrat in a speech that lasted 1 hour and 15 minutes, not one Democrat applauded anything this man said. And finally, he came up and said, he stopped his speech and said, "I realized that nothing I would say," and looked over on that side of the aisle and said, "Nothing I can say will get them to applaud." And of course, in these speeches the presidents give when they give a speech before the Joint Chiefs of the Joint um, session of Congress, is they put applause lines in there where they talk about somebody who maybe got shot and now is a paraplegic, and you certainly want to sympathize with that. He had a number of applause lines in there where someone would have to, in fact, agree that that's something we should, in fact, stand behind. They wouldn't even do that. And Donald Trump finally said, "I now realize that nothing I can say is going to make anybody on this side of the aisle applaud. Not that you need applause for anything you're saying, but you want to say something that we can all, as a nation, agree upon. We can all agree that we're all Americans, right? We can all agree upon that. And that if the country's in danger, we're all in danger because we all live in the same country. We're all citizens of the country. And we're the only country I've been in where that's an issue. It's not an issue in those other countries. I've been in 25, I think it's been 25 countries that I've been in. Some I've been passing through. So it's more than 25, but some have just been passing through. I passed through, have developed some friendships, and a number that I pass through. I meet people at the airport, and then we dialogue, and after I leave and I'm going somewhere else, they'll have my number and I have theirs, and we'll contact each other, stay in touch and things like that. And so I have friends in other countries that I've not actually stayed in, but passed through. I have a lot of friends, not a lot, but when I say a lot of friends, I mean more than one or two. I got more friends in Belgium than I got more friends in Belgium than I have in the United States. Because I have a lot of adversaries in the United States. Because I admit I'm a controversial figure, and I intend to stay a controversial figure. Particularly out of these persons, some of the ones like this one guy got on my post that I taught, and now they think they can challenge me. I'm gonna tell you right now, you might think you're on that level. You went to got these degrees and came back. You're not here. That I'm saying it to one person, but in particular, they jumped on my post about 4 or 5 days ago. You're not here. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make here is that when you are telling me as an American citizen that you're going to do something to my country, I'm telling you right now, I'm for, in fact, taking action against you to stop you from saying that because I believe you, and I think you're trying to stir people to do what you're talking about. And you're not going to threaten this country and get away with it. You're not going to make a threat against this country as a leader of another country. You're not going to threaten the United States of America because that will be a matter of self-defense of you even saying that you're gonna call this country the big Satan, and then set an environment through which person can come up against this country because they believe that you are telling the truth and that you've made this country what you're saying. That's a threat against this country. If you think that's not true, look what they said about Donald Trump, and people are trying to kill this man. 2 brazen attempts in broad daylight. We've had 4 presidents in this country assassinated. And we've had Donald Trump 2 attempts to assassinate this man because of what the media is promoting about who this man actually is. When this man really is one that should be celebrated, and will go down in history, is my prediction, will go down in history as one of the, I don't want to use the word great. I think we only had one great president. I think we have a competent, I use the word competent. We have not had too many of them either. We've had one great president, and we've had very few competent presidents. And I'm trying to think of who the competent ones were because that would be a very short list, by the way. Not too many of them have been competent. Maybe Andrew Jackson. I give him that because of his having gone out of office without expanding the nation's debt. and they don't like him because of that, quite frankly. But I don't. But I consider him to be a president of consequence. But when you start talking about great presidents, I don't think we can put anybody up there on Mount Rushmore except George Washington. I'm sorry. You Trump doesn't belong up there. I think it's consequential. I think that he's going. If he continues to do the things he's doing, I think he will be a president of some consequence. I think a certain, and then if he continues down this uh, toward down this road he's going down, he makes some mistakes, but a couple of rungs down from where the great presidents have been, and there's only about great presidents. Look, folks, great presidents are not made every day. And when I say great president, I'm talking about someone that did something that was so unusual that no other person that would have stood in its stead at that time would have done that in the way in which it was done, and would have done it as well as that person did it. I can't think of anyone else that would have done what George Washington did. That makes George Washington stand out. I don't know of another president we've had. And all those persons, I had one person get on my wall the other day and told me, one of my former students, college students, was telling me he'd gone to this one place in Maryland, and he finally has come to what I was saying when I was in class about Abraham Lincoln, and said, I now see that he went to some house where they were, I think it was the Frederick Douglass house or something. It's in Maryland, one of the places he went in Maryland. I had been there. I forget exactly which one, but I had been there. I know that, and I knew the recording that he listened to. And I still stand on, and he was saying that, as a matter of fact, endorsing this view as well. I was saying that I consider Abraham Lincoln to be the anti-Washington. That's why they build him up so much, because they are on the framers of this country. They are trying to take him down, trying to dismiss him as being important of the president that they set, and they are trying to take him down by putting other people in their place and saying they were greater than these persons were. Someone putting a president greater than George Washington, the founding president of the country, the man that set a mold for the president. Look, you cannot push that by George Moss. I'm just sorry, you can't do it. And I came here today to the studio, by the way, to talk about something that they're all talking about, given what happened this past weekend, and now talking about the War Powers Act. I'm getting ready to tell you this. And there's no scholar in this country that's qualified to come behind me and say otherwise. They can say otherwise, but then they're not qualified to do it. And I dare any of them to try. Yeah, all of them. I came here to talk about what they're talking about, the War Powers Act. I have a copy of it right here. The major parts of it. I brought it to the studio because I want to read some parts of it. You tell me which part you think passes the smell test. These traitors in Washington. I read Aaron Coulter got a book about them called Treason. This is treason going on in this country. Here's some highlights of the War Powers Act of 1973. You tell me which part of this, and these are just the highlights now of the act, which parts of this sound like it's constitutional to you? The president, this is the War Powers Act of 1973. The president must notify Congress within 48 hours of deploying troops into hostilities or situations where hostilities are imminent. Military action initiated by the president without a declaration of war or specific authorization from Congress are limited to 60 days. With an additional 30 days allowed for troop withdrawal. Congress can at any time require the President of the United States to end U.S. participation in hostilities through a concurrent resolution or joint resolution. I went and pulled this down as to the reason why the act was in fact passed. It says here, the act aims to ensure that both the President and the Congress shall share the responsibility for decisions involving the use of military force. So does that mean that then when the president was inaugurated on the 20th of January 2025, that when he became the commander in chief, does that mean then that they also took the inaugural oath and they were made the commander in chief by those 35 words in an inaugural address, inaugural oath taken on the president's first day before he can go into office? Those 35 words that they mentioned. Do each of the members of Congress also take that oath? And if they do, where do we see it? And where is there an oath of the presidency for 535 members of Congress? I'm telling you and all you scholars this. The War Powers Act of 1973 is unconstitutional. And so are these judges acting unconstitutionally who are ordering this president. We're telling this president when he's taking people out of the country, they're telling the president he cannot, in fact, take people out of the country who had no lawful right to be here in the first place, and they have the right under the Constitution to exercise the right of go to before the court to plead their case in court when they didn't have the right to be here in the first place, but they have due process rights under the Constitution of the United States. You got to be out of your mind.
Yeah, there is a double standard there. I mean, it's like, you got to honor us like you would your own citizens, even though we are. I mean, with this one guy went around talking about all the countries in the world where you're found without documentation, way really repressive treatment of you. Okay, no, what we do is we could sign them up for all kinds of benefits and let them set up, find a place for them to stay. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. They better start listening to George Moss because they claim to be constitutional scholars, but look how much they let pass that's unconstitutional. There are no constitutional scholars in the Congress.
No, it struck me though, because I've been listening, because I've had people call here, so I couldn't really listen to everything. But so maybe you already covered it. So if you did, I'm sorry. But the War Powers Act, it wasn't the way we were supposed to declare war already clearly outlined in the Constitution.
Well, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11 says, and here's the wording of it: Congress shall have the power to declare war. That's the language. That's Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11. The Congress has the power to declare war. Does that mean then that Congress the president can be ordered to get the approval of the Congress to place troops in combat? Does that mean then it's comprehensive to the president cannot in fact carry out what is a responsibility of the President of the United States and the executive branch of government, who is made the commander in chief, but not to use it because Congress has to approve him to be that, which is ordered to him to be that by the Constitution of the United States. You scholars that are not arguing this point, I don't have any respect for you. I don't have any respect for you because you see the quid pro quo, but to understand that if the office holders who are political instruments. They are instruments of the people who are the political instruments, the voice of the people in government. If they disagree and disapprove of the President of the United States, there are remedies for their disapproval in the political acts given to them in the Constitution of the United States. But you must use the Constitution method to stop the President of the United States. He can be stopped from doing that. But there's a process to carry it out in order to do it. If you're not willing to use the processes that are given to you, then shut up. You can't tell a president of the United States that he must order planes in mid-air to turn around, and the president of the United States is misusing his authority. They're talking about the man as a king. The man is allowing them to misuse his authority by telling him he cannot act within the constitutional restraints of the executive branch of government. That's my argument, that the president can act within the restrictions of that which is allowed him in the executive branch of government, and no one can encroach upon the authority of the president in that branch of government, not the courts and so on and so forth.
And this is really puzzling me. Like, there was actually coming to stop the actions he already, basically ordered to have taken. I'm thinking, I'm sitting there like, I don't have the understanding of the Constitution you do, but I do have a fairly decent one. I'm like, I don't think they could preempt this, or they can't not preempt it, but countermand it or something. I don't see how they can do this.
No, what they did with Trump is what they did to Nixon. They couldn't have removed Nixon through the impeachment process. But what they did with Nixon was that they went out there first. They were very smart in how they handled the Watergate, which was a CIA operation. Don't forget that they want to bring this man down. They brought them. They had run the man out of Washington in 1960 by the stolen election, which they gave to Richard Nixon, which they took from Richard Nixon and gave that to John F. Kennedy. That's as true as I'm sitting here. That election was stolen from Richard Nixon, and everybody now will say what I was saying years ago. This election was in fact taken from the rightful owner. This was the mafia.
Well, I remember when I was a kid knowing if that was a stolen election. I didn't have the understanding of the Electoral College and whatever, but everybody said that the dead people who voted. They found that out soon afterwards. The dead people on the rolls for voting were voting for Kennedy. I guess it should be a Democrat, because with being underneath the Democrats, you can have miracles happen. Dead people can rise up and vote.
Yeah, they've been doing. We have had a number of elections where the verdict of the voters was in fact rescinded, canceled. We had, in fact, I wrote today, I'm writing this out in public because I don't think anybody is qualified in this country to challenge what I'm writing. I didn't slide through these degrees, folks. I didn't go in there with my head down. I had my hand up in the air because I was constantly raising questions, because I didn't agree with a lot of what they were saying, because I understood the Constitution.
When I was growing up, we had people. I grew up around older guys who've been in the Second World War, and they talk about the law and stuff like that. And a lot of times they'd state something that was very everything else is wrong. Everybody else is accepting the way people interpret in the news and stuff. And they would actually counterpoint and say, no, this is. And they lay out a case, and people ignore it, roll their eyes. In particular, the guy who used to live next door where the studio is at. He always told people in the state of Michigan, if you have the right to purchase a firearm, that gives you a right to carry it openly. And people lied. Oh, you're ridiculous. You got to get a permit, and the cops will probably be. But he was right. And that was under review later, they found out he was absolutely right. Now, this wasn't a man who went to college. He didn't even finish high school because he went into the military during the Second World War. But he had to understand just to read the law. And that's what I'm just making as a point. Everybody thinks these scholars like Dershowitz. Remember the point that he always said about, well, it's not legal. This is the impeachment's not until it's walked over here. Where is that stated in the Constitution? It doesn't, but it makes it as goes along.
Let me stop right here and say this: Dershowitz is not a constitutional scholar. He's a lawyer. He's not a constitutional scholar. Saying the things he's saying, this man doesn't even understand the impeachment process. The things this man has said is just you can't say those things. I've said this before on the air many times. You can't say the things that Dershowitz was saying on the air and be a constitutional scholar. No scholar would say that. And in fact, I don't see that many don't go into this area here. I notice they don't go into impeachment because they don't really understand the language and the different parts of it that governs that process. Particularly Article 1, Section 3, clause 7. They don't get that. They don't get that a president cannot be placed on trial for what he did in office once he's out of office, and that's because you can only impeach a president while he's in office. You cannot impeach him once he leaves office, and it's only through the impeachment process and the conviction that you can expose him now away from the presidency. So now he can be tried and he can be charged in the court of law. You cannot charge the president in a court of law unless you go through that process.
So he can't be tried. I mean, even if it was like there were serious charges against individuals, say it was somebody we would have to all agree this they should have brought up on charges, but on the ones who are no longer president, even if they were like the actions, because it was done, those actions probably were taken because of his role being the president. They'd have to basically it couldn't carry on to a civilian life, right?
No, you see, because the reason why the framers made put that in Article 1, Section 3, Clause 7, put that part in there, is because we know that a president is going to have enemies in the political arena because he's doing political things, and not all people agree with him and want to stop him. And then once he leaves office, want to in fact come against him because there were some things that they felt were egregious when he was assuming power. So they might come after him later on. And what they did was put in there certain particulars that will allow the president to be safeguarded against this persecution once he leaves office. And that cannot go on with a president once he leaves office about things he did in carrying out the constitutional responsibilities, or maybe something in the presidential office that he should not have done, that they want to say later on he should not have done it, and you're going to go again, cannot do that. There's a safeguard in there.
It's like indemnification.
The framers were smart enough to know themselves, first of all. I mean, they would put stuff in the Constitution against what their own psychology and so on and so forth. They knew that they were just as capable of having basic dishonest urges and intent and political intent as anyone else would do. They didn't think they were gods. They were guarding against themselves as well, putting things in there they knew they would be capable of doing to stop themselves as much as stopping. That's what they say, do it in the Constitution for ourselves and our posterity. That's what do you think they meant by that? I mean, nobody said that, but that's what they would. Read the document. Read the document. Read it carefully, word for word. Go through it line by line and try to understand. Okay, what do they mean by that? We, the people of the United States, therefore, we cannot come out here talking about we are the world and have these judges talking about all these people have the same rights under our document, that they have of citizens of this country. Those that are not citizens have the same rights. You come in this country, you break in this country, and we take you and round you up and put you in Guantanamo until we get a plane to take you out of here. We don't have to go and ask anybody for the authority to do it. You shouldn't have been in the first place. And the President of the United States has the right to and is taking an oath to protect and defend the people of the United States of America. That's his oath. And if he does not do that, he should be impeached and should be removed from office if he does not carry that out. But they're asking the president not to carry out his executive responsibilities. And they cannot order the president to do that when the Constitution gives them the authority to do it. Do you scholars agree with that or not? Do you scholars agree with that? I mean, I'm just asking. Do you agree with that? Because if you don't agree with that, come. What's that number? Call and disagree with it on the air. And let's see where that goes. That conversation is going to be very short. The President of the United States can act within the jurisdiction that's given to him in Article 2 of the United States Constitution. And the reason why this act right here that I got through reading a few minutes ago is unconstitutional is because you cannot tell the president to do these things and assign his authority to a branch of government outside of the domain of the Article 2, because that's not because what you're doing is that you are doing an Article 1 function, and you're now bringing that into Article 2. Article 2 is executive function. That has nothing to do with the legislative branch of government. Do you scholars agree with that? Do you agree with that? that you cannot put the legislative branch of government as a function in Article 2 of the Constitution of the United States, because Article 2 is the executive function of the government, and you have a separation of powers. That's why the War Powers Act of 1973, George Moss is saying it. There's no scholar in the country qualified to say otherwise. I'm just telling you the truth. They're not qualified. This act is an unconstitutional act of the United States. And if they ever thought about impeaching Donald Trump, if they ever thought about doing that, every last one that would do that should be removed from office, because they're showing no respect for the Constitution of the United States and no respect for the American people, whom they're sworn to. All of them are sworn to protect the Constitution of the United States. If they understood it, they would not be talking about impeaching the President of the United States, because he carried out an Article 2 function. If you, in fact, disapprove of that, let's say that you simply take a political position that you disapprove of that. Okay, fine. You can politically disagree with it and take a political action against it. I'm not saying that it's closed to any refutation on the part of anyone else. You see, but you have to. But in order to apply the remedy to it, you have to use the constitutional remedy that's allowed for you to do that, because the Constitution does not allow. Listen carefully at this point here, because that's what you're trying to make this claim. You're saying that Donald Trump seeks to be a king. Well, they knew that there will be some persons that want to use power. I didn't call Franklin Delano Roosevelt's name out, but above his pay grade. Because that's when you get in power and will not leave, and you violate the precedent that was in fact followed from the time of George Washington stepping down to the time in which Roosevelt wouldn't step down, but died in office in 1940. Died in office in 1945. It took Roosevelt's death to get this man out of the White House. And then they rushed in the aftermath of that. This is another one of those never again moments. Never again. Never again are we going to have a person that will get into the presidency of the United States of America where he has the sole power of that office, and will get in there and refuse to leave, as Roosevelt did. And they soon after that went and proposed, first of all, the passage of the 22nd Amendment, and then 38 states ratified that and made that law, the two-term limit. And no person can serve, no matter what they're saying about it now, no president can serve more than 2 terms, or if you're serving another president's term, up to 2 years of that term, and then 2 terms of your own, so a total of 10 years altogether. No president can serve more than that. There's no wiggle room in it, because they nailed that language down. Trump will be leaving at the end of his term in 2029. Trump will be leaving. When he leaves, coming in 2025, and then when the next president, I'm saying 2025, Trump will leave office, having been elected in 2024. He will leave office in 2029, January 20th at 12 o'clock noon. That's the time he'll be vacating that office. He would not be allowed. And if he, and I know he knows that he is. I can't believe that he is trying to find something that allows him to do more than that. And if he does that, I'm going to be the first one. I support Donald Trump, but I don't support him. I'm not one of the persons that's a blind supporter. If he tries to do anything beyond what allows in the Constitution, I'm against it. You have my undying uh, opposition.
See, I don't like the idea of bombing. You and I disagree about the bombing, but they're in Iran. But if it gets, we could just leave it at that and that's it. But let's face it, they're going to retaliate. We're going to be in another damn war. Okay, that's what I don't want. I mean, but we're going to be because we think we got to save the world. And
I don't think we have to save the world, John. But I'll tell you this: you're not going to be in a world this dangerous and not have to fight at some point.
yeah, but see, I just don't see. We have people in there from Iran in this country because the Democrats let them in, and every time we try to say not here, oh, that's racist. Now they're getting worried about it. Okay, we got people. Iran already said they activated the sleeper cells. I mean, they've already said that. The Iranian government.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. So
I'll tell you what. You see, this is what I'm talking about. We're not talking about. We're not picking no daisies here. We understand that we are in a dangerous world, and that's why we'll take the dangerous world on its face. That the world is a very dangerous place to be, and we have to tell the world. This is what we mean by peace through strength. We mean to tell the world that we understand the danger that the world poses. That we're in a dangerous world. We are the focus of a lot of the danger because we are the nation that stands out among all of the nations for a number of reasons. Number one, our currency is the international exchange currency. That puts a target on your back because that status right there elevates you to the point everybody's now using your currency to do their own economic business. Everybody, the dollar is recognized everywhere, and they want to take that away as well. I understand that, and some of that is legitimate. The U.S. the dollar is being challenged, and it should be challenged given what they're doing to it, because what they're doing to it is they're in fact taking the value of the dollar out of existence by inflating it. They're inflating the dollar out of existence, and now the dollar is so weak is now being challenged around the world with other hegemonic currencies. Other currencies are now coming into their own. The cryptocurrency, you hear about cryptocurrency and these other currency having these machines and so on. They're now creating other currencies to challenge the dollar because the dollar has been weakened by these politicians who are traitors. There's treason that's going on in this country. And contempt for the American people, I'm telling you that's what this is about. And the contempt for Donald Trump is really a contempt for the American people because the American people put Donald Trump in power, and that's unforgivable to the Democrats that they would in fact opt out to elect this man on 3 different occasions. 3 different occasions they elected this man president, and he won 3 times. And they gave him credit for 2 of the victories that he had. And I contend, and I said this in one of my posts as well. I contend that if they had been prepared for Donald Trump in 2016, he would never gotten to the presidency. But they were unprepared for it because they'd fallen for their own analysis of what was going on in the political arena in 2016. They thought that a man that had never held political office before and never had any military background, which we never had a president that had that kind of resume, no military service and no political resume, and become president of the United States. They never happened before. So they were laughing him out of. He was a laughing stock of the political world up until November the 8th, 2016, when he November the 8th, 2016, when Donald Trump did that which never been done before, which showed this was an unusual man. This man is unusual. I don't put him up there at the top rung, nowhere close to it, but this man is unusual in terms of the fact that he is America first president. This man lauds. This man actually loves the United States of America. Loves it for the gifts it's given to him and his family, as he should. He could not have become a multi-billionaire with the skills that with the skills that he has in other country, because he doesn't produce. He does not. He bought real estate and built um, some real estate as well. Built some things. He's a builder, but he's not a person like Ford, Andrew Carnegie, Vanderbilt. Um, some of the people that have gone into in production and built the country. The ones that built the country, you can't build countries on a plantation. You build a country by building up an industrial foundation. And you go back and see that's what this was about back in the day, when they were building this country up. A lot of this noise that we're making was that the question was whether or not we're going to have the agricultural base to be the foundation for building up the industrial base. Because without the industrial base, you don't really have anything in terms of the country being able to defend itself, develop arms. You can't do that on a farm. You got to do that in industrial plants, weapons and things like that. You got to produce that in factories, and that's the development of the country forward, and all the rest of them. The ones that develop capitalism, the ones that develop the United States of America. You cannot do that by raising corn and cotton and stuff like that. You can use it as a foundation, but you have to be venture out into developing factories and things like that. And that's where the production. That's where the greatness of this country lies. It does not lie in those cotton fields. Cotton fields did not make this country great. What made this country great was this industrial engine that was developed. That's where the greatness of the country was in fact made. And I salute those capitalists, those industrialists who did what they did at the time that this country was trying to get on its feet around the 1890s and things of that sort. I also give them a lot of credit for the protective tariffs that they used in order to stop the competition to the extent we can get these embryonic factors and things like that off the ground, because we needed protection, because there were people country got started before us, in that England, for example, had a head start. So some protection had to be given, but don't go crazy with it. Don't go tariff crazy. But the tariffs sometimes have a means to a role to play in terms of development and the continued expansion of a country, a country's productive capacity. There's a role for that. But let's not get confused here about a number of things. And let's not get confused about time limits, power, in different corridors of the government. Let's not get confused of where the powers are assigned in the Constitution of the United States. Let's not get confused in saying that they can overlap, interfere with, in order. I can't believe that we believe that a man who is elected by the whole people can be ordered to do anything by people who are appointed, who don't go before any voters, but are appointed by the President of the United States. The President appoints. Does anybody understand the President appoints all civil officers of the United States of America? The President appoints them. How many persons are aware of that? The President, the Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States. All the civil officers of the United States are appointed by the President of the United States. All the judges on the Supreme Court appointed. I should say they are the appointees of the president. He nominates them. and then they are approved by the Senate. But the president makes the appointment of all the civil office holders. All the federal judges are appointed by the president of the United States. No appointee can then turn around. If you even think about this for a minute, see how ridiculous it is for them to go along with this. These scholars are not constitutional scholars that allow that to go on. I heard John Yoo from Berkeley Law School on Mark Levine, I think last night or night before last, one of them, because it comes on Saturday. No, it had to be last night because Saturday was covering the bombing. So Mark Levine was off the air, but he had John Yoo as one of his guests last night, and it's just amazing that they don't take up this issue. That they don't take this on in terms of the separation. The bottom line is Article 1, Article 2, and Article 3. That's the bottom line. The separation of powers. The powers are in fact separated. And you cannot in fact cross over from the line that's drawn for the legislative branch of government in Article 1 and then cross over into Article 2 unless there is a provision in the Constitution that allows that. Now, I have to say this. The legislative branch of government does, in fact, go into another branch of the government through the separation of powers. For example, the trial of the president. A trial is really a judicial issue. The judicial branch of government does and handles the judicial matters are handled by the courts. But you see, here's where the caveat is, where it in fact allows for a setting across the lines of that division. The Constitution therefore states, doesn't it? And that's the only time you can do it. If the Constitution states that it can be done, it can be done. It cannot be done by them just simply assuming the authority to do it. And I find it very vulgar, very vulgar. You almost drive you to tears when you see it. For them to be ordering the president. No wonder we don't have no respect around the world. They see this. I saw it when Ramaphosa came here from South Africa, where they were doing all these arguments about different things. This man was listening to our internal mess that's going on, and Cyril Ramaphosa was coming here, and he's injecting himself into the politics of the United States and so on and so forth, and he had to speak about certain things because they're trying to make Donald Trump racist because he's talking to a black man from South Africa, and they can remember Mandela, and they're gonna try to import by him talking to Ramaphosa and trying to protect those farmers who are endangered in South Africa. They're gonna make Trump a racist because let him into the country and so on and so forth. Yeah, you can get very confused, but I don't get confused about that. The court has no authority to do what it's doing right now unless the authority is given to it in certain arenas in the Constitution, and it gives the court's authority in the it does give authority across the lines of demarcation of the separation of powers, But when it does that, it orders them to be able to do it by stating it as such. For example, the courts are given in Article 3 the judicial powers. But because the judicial powers is being exercised by the legislative branch of government, that's what's happening in the impeachment when you have those trials. That's a legislative. That's not a legislative function. A legislative function is the lawmaking function, but they're carrying out a function of the judicial branch in another branch of government, in the legislative branch of government, and therefore, because that crosses the line, the Constitution does that, but it does it in order to control them doing it. That's why it sets up the standard for it, and then it in fact localizes it. So they don't just go out there and do anything in terms of the legislative coming into another branch of government and then assuming the authority in that branch of government. It limits it by what it limits it to do in that other domain that it's in, because it's not normally in that domain. And when you allow it to cross over into another domain and therefore blur the lines of the separation, you have to be very careful with that. And that's why the branches of government not only are separated, but they are there to check on each other. You can check on the president of the United States, by the way. You can check on the president of the United States. I'm not saying the president, because he's not a king, but the check on the president of the United States is to be ordered by the way in which you do it. And you cannot do by what Boasberg is his name. Boasberg should be the one that should be impeached and should be removed from office. This man is assuming authority he does not have. You can't order the president of the United States around at that level of government. Cannot be done. John, we're wrapping up now. Cannot be done. It cannot be done. Boasberg is beyond his authority. You cannot order the president of the United States around and cannot do that. This act is unconstitutional. The president was within his authority to do what he did this past weekend. And if anyone impeaches him because of that, they should be removed from office because they are violating the Constitution of the United States. Okay, you got to wrap it up. That's my sermon for the day. Until next week, I want you to follow your dream. If you don't follow your dream, you'll never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.